This video is sponsored by Bambu Lab. Hello there and welcome. I'm Ole Brøgger, and if you're new here, I really hope I'll earn your subscription today. Today, I'm gonna make a huge 3D printed tavern. And this tavern is from Loot Studios that released this in 2023 as their Welcome Pack 3.0. And since I saw this for the first time, I just thought, hey, I really want to print this. But I only had resin printers, so I just kind of left out the idea. And when late last year, Bambu Lab sent me this A1, I just got hooked again. And I started to print some of the parts. You can see I got the black parts and the gray parts are all printed on the A1. You can see how huge this build is going to be. Look at the reference on these models. They are also from Loot Studios. This is just the base for this tavern, but this would take a long time to print. So Bambu Lab, they were so kind to send me this, the H2D with the combo. There's an AMS here on the top, but it can't be in the frame because it's so big. And I'm sure this will get the job done, so we better get started. This is the Bambu Lab H2D with the AMS Pro 2, and I will put it to the test with this absolutely massive tavern from Loot Studios. I already printed the dungeon on the Bambu Lab A1 and it did a fantastic job. But something of this scale and with this level of detail, the H2D really shows what an upgrade can do. So why the H2D? The first thing you notice is speed. The H2D isn't just fast, it's consistent at high speed, it maintains clean edges, sharp details and stable layer lines. That means less weighting, less sanding, and more building. Second, the AMS Pro 2 changes the workflow completely. I can load up multiple filaments, swap material automatically, and keep the entire print sequence running without babysitting. Like this spool, when it runs out, another one will just take over and you have no waste at all. For multi-day projects like this tavern, that reliability is really priceless. With the H2D, you will get high-speed accuracy, it maintains details, and this is ideal when you're making large builds. The A1 handled the dungeon beautifully. It is a great printer and still one of my favorite for everyday projects. But when you step it up to something this big, the H2D gives you more stability on tall prints, faster completion times, better consistency along large print surfaces, and the AMS Pro 2 makes long print jobs more predictable. Oh, and did I forget to mention, this is a dual head machine. This will make multi-material prints faster and more reliable and of course less waste. And it's not about replacing the A1. It is about having the right tool for the right job on the scale of this project. During this build, I only had one failed print, a spaghetti incident, but it was not totally failed. The H2D let me exclude some of the elements that failed and continued printing, and I didn't waste time or filament. Over the last 4 weeks, I have been printing almost non-stop. The printer has been running for 15 days, 3 hours and 35 minutes. I had 31 print plates that needed to be printed and 121 parts for this tavern. And to give you some more facts, I spent 10.5 kilos, that's about 23 pounds of filament. And if you just pull all this filament out in one long string, it is 3.3 kilometers or 2 miles. Next step is to glue all the parts together. I want a section for each floor in one piece, and there is a lot of parts, and the recommended stuff to glue PLA together is superglue. There's 3 grams in one bottle, and I'm gonna need a lot of superglue just to put everything together, and I have to come up with a solution that will work better and cheaper. So I found something that can help me put all this together very cheap and very effective. There is one problem. I printed some of these parts in PTG. Not that that is a problem itself. It's strong and even stronger than PLA, but I don't like the glossy surface and the details are not as strong in PTG as they are in PLA. So I decided to reprint in PLA, and then everything here is made out of PLA plastic. I was thinking about, can I fuse this together somehow? And I thought about acetone. It is very good to melt and glue ABS plastic, but it doesn't work very well on PLA. So I think maybe some of this plastic cement or plastic glue for models, but it's very expensive. One bottle here is about €4 or maybe $5. So that is not a solution either. I found that methyl ethyl ketone, or called MEK, in some other places called butanol. Don't know if I pronounced that correct. I'm not very good with all those chemical names. And this is actually the stuff that is in some of these bottles. There's also acetone in here, but a bottle like this is €6.50. That's about $7.50 or $8. So it is very cheap and you get 1 liter for that amount of money. It has one problem, but it's the same problem that you find in these. It's toxic, yeah, I don't want to swear, but it's very toxic. It has fumes that are not good for your health, and it's very high flammable. So you gotta take some precautions before using this stuff, like a respirator, and you need to go use some gloves. So I'm going to start putting everything here together, and then I will get back to painting everything. I've put some of this stuff in a smaller bottle, so I got a better control over it, because I don't want to use too much of it, just the right amount to bind all these parts together. And here is the rest of the parts needed for the basement. But I will use this respirator before I open the bottle. I don't want to breathe the stuff in there. I don't know if you can hear what I'm saying, but I will start putting this together. We also need some gloves. We can start with these two parts. They line up almost perfectly. So let's see how this stuff works. The working time for this is very short. I did make some initial tests on some smaller parts and it just worked perfectly. But maybe there is a difference. I have not tried with the gray PLA before, but I think PLA should be PLA. And some of the smaller parts I tested this out on, they just set instantly, but they were way smaller than this. Yep. As you can see here, it is melting the surface, but I don't think it's perfectly aligned in the print. So it will not bind, and it is kind of sticky. So it should work, but maybe I will have to turn back and use some superglue, or maybe a combination of both. And this MEK is not good on surfaces where the parts don't line up perfectly together and have smooth surfaces that can grab each other. So I will need to move on, even that I don't like to, but I have to spend some more superglue getting all these parts together. And to remove these seams that are right here, and it shows that the parts doesn't line up perfectly, and this is the reason why this mech doesn't work. And then I will have to use something else. I got this UV curing putty from Elegoo, and it still requires gloves, but it is very efficient and it will remove the seam. It's just all about using a brush and push it into the seam. I will pour up a tiny amount of isopropyl alcohol here, and then you can just wash everything out. And when this is painted, you won't be able to see there's a seam there. Well, I'm down to my last bottle of superglue, and the progress of this is not going as expected. This stuff is just melting my brain. I got an awful headache. I've been working on this for almost 4 hours now, and it only works if the surfaces are just totally flat up against each other, and then it works perfectly, but it still takes too long and I'm starting to get weird. And the activator is also very harsh on my head, so now I need to go to the hardware store and get some more super glue. Maybe I can find another product where I can experiment, but for now, this is where I am. And I still need to put all this together. So basically, I'm only halfway. I spent the last bottle of my 3-gram super glue. I'm using this gel type because the runny stuff is just too difficult to work with. And 3 grams was just enough to glue these 3 parts together. But I've been to the hardware store and I got some more. I bought 2 more bottles of the 3 grams, and I also got a smaller little 1 grams, but there's still 3 grams. It was a bit cheaper. And then I thought, okay, maybe I could try this. It says it is gluable on plastic and it should bond in 10 seconds. So I'm gonna try this out and see if it works, because I am done using this stuff. It is so toxic and it just mixes up and clouds my brain. I'm getting so dizzy even though I'm using a respirator. However, I will still use this on small parts because it is very effective and cheap too, and a very good substitute for this. For now, let's try out this and see how it goes. I put up some of this stuff in a small cup and I found out that I actually need a lot of it, but it seems to work, and it's like it's filling out those gaps as well. So that's a good thing. If this works, I'm quite happy about it. But maybe I'm just too impatient when it comes to waiting for glue to dry. I can save a lot of super glue and just put it in the corners, and then I don't need to sit here and spend time to put pressure on it. I actually think this stuff will be pretty good at hiding those seams. It's like it doesn't shrink when it dries. I think this will do the job. I'm quite impressed. It works. Well, now I just need to glue up the rest. Almost done. I just need to put on the roof and then we can glue on the chimneys. Ho ho. And this is still separate because it looks pretty good and it will fit. There we go. I got 3 chimneys and this is the last thing I need to glue, and then I will go to bed because it is getting very late here in the evening. And now I can really put my new spray booth to the test. I've only used it the day where I built my paint rack, and this is the only thing I've painted so far. But I need a turntable, and I also printed that on the Bambu Lab H2D. I scaled it up so I maxed out the build plate, and it was 3 prints. It didn't take very long time. I just printed it in draft just to speed up the process, but it works so great. And thank you to the designer for making this. It has some wheels and it just spins perfectly. And this will be very useful when I'm going to paint all these parts. And for the paint, I'm gonna use these Army Painter Game Master, which unfortunately is discontinued. I'm very sad about Army Painter discontinuing this product. It basically removes all the layer lines, so they're very hard to see. They should just relaunch this, and maybe in some more colors, because I think it will be a lot easier for people that make terrain and other stuff and want to paint and prime everything. I have seen people using Mod Podge and all other sorts of stuff, but never this. And I have tried it on other prints. It just worked so great. So this will be my go-to for now. I still have a decent stock of it, and I should have enough for this tavern. But I've also used some of the miniature primers, especially this leather brown, because it is very good as a base color for wood. I'll only use it on the internal wood because I want it to be nice and look new. But on the outside where it's weathered, I will use this brownish green dungeon subterrane because I want this more grayish brown dark look. But this is awesome. I also have this uniform gray. I don't know if I'm going to use it, but let's see when we get there. The fan is a bit noisy, and I will wear gloves because this could be a bit messy. I will start with the dungeon, and look how it spins. I really like this. Let's put this away. And here I'll use the ruins and cliffs. And another handy tip, when you're shaking paints, no matter if it's this kind or these aerosol bottles, never do it like this because you can actually break something inside. Always shake it like this. This is the correct way to shake all kinds of paint bottles. And to clear the nozzle on these paint bottles, you just flip it upside down and you spray it until only air is coming out. And then your nozzle will be ready for the next use. I can start using the little brown on the interior. I'll not give it a full coverage. This is just as a base coat. I still want the dark color to shine through. So it will just be a light spray on all the interior, so it will look something like this. I will use the uniform gray for the interior and exterior of the dungeon, just to give it something like a cinematic highlight. I'm a bit in doubt with this color, but I think I will try to test it on one of the roofs. It's been almost 2 weeks since I primed this because I had a lot of other things to do, like going to the UK Games Expo, and that was an awesome trip, and you can watch it right up here if you click in the corner. I was recommended using some of these makeup sponges. I got a couple of those, and I'm definitely going to try it out because this is very interesting for me to try something new. But otherwise it will be dry brushing, some air brushing, using washes, and I also brought in my turntable here from my paint booth. Maybe I should print another one because this is actually an awesome tool when working on big pieces like this. But for now, I will just start from the bottom and work my way up. There is a lot of ground to cover here, and I will just use some regular craft paints and some of my primer paints because I have enough of that. I'll use a dark brown on all the timber and wood on this building, inside and outside. And with this color alone, I spent about 5 hours, and I probably missed a spot here and there, and I had to fix that later. And there is also a lot of doors and a secret door bookshelf. I'll also need to paint that. I'll also use the German Panzer Grey on the outside between all the rocks. There's also a couple of sacks outside, and they will need another color. And the more I'm getting around this building, I'm noticing there are so many details, and this is going to take a very long time to paint this if I want a high detail paint job. But let's see if it can speed up the process using these sponges. I think it actually works pretty well. For all the floor tiles in the dungeon, I'm mixing up some different kinds of brown, yellows and greens and reds. And this is a very fast way to paint flat surfaces, and you can actually also dry brush with it. But for all the stucco on the outside of the building, and even inside, I'll use my airbrush. There is so much stucco to cover, and the airbrush, it just made it more effective. I don't know how many hours I spent, but it was a lot. The roof will also need some tinting, and I will use this blue just to make it a bit more vibrant. And after using the airbrush, I had to fix all the overspray. And I used a sponge and a brush. Some rough iron for the spires and other metal parts. I usually make my own washes on big terrain pieces, but this time I used the dark tone from the army painter in my airbrush, and after it was dry, I could use this blue color to dry brush the roof and some brown colors on all the wood around the house. I'm using this moss effect from Dirty Down through my airbrush to give it a more moldy and old look, because this house is actually falling apart. And on the outside, between all the stone tiles, I will use this crowd cover common earth. I have thinned down the glue with some water, and then I'm just spreading all this dirt on top of the tiles and wipe it away with a brush. And to make sure that everything will stay where I want it, I'm using some crowd fixer through a spray bottle. And inside the dungeon, I'll use the strong tone on the wood and the stones on the floor. And now I can actually start to focus on the minor details. I spent 14 hours for a whole day just to painting what you have seen up till now. I still need to put down a lot more washes, but I think it's okay. But now I will actually try to mount some of the doors. It's very easy, you just pop them in and use a piece of filament to keep them there. It opens and closes perfectly. The wash in the dungeon is dry, and I can start to dry brush everything and put in some more of this dirt. It will be an old house with a dirty dungeon. I use the same procedure as I did on the outside tiles. I'll use some more of this Dirty Down moss with a brush to make everything look more moldy. All the details on the outside of the building is now done, and I can start focusing on everything inside. I still need to put some washes on the floor and all the wood, and for this I don't want to waste my very expensive washes, so I actually made my own. It is just some black paint mixed with water and a tiny splash of dish soap. It took almost a whole day for it to dry, but I needed to make sure before I started to dry brush everything. There is also a lot of picture frames on the walls, and I started to paint this with the color called Death Metal from the army painter. I think it will give it a very good look. But what about the pictures? Well, I found some random pictures on the internet of old oil paintings, fantasy look-alike, and then I just cut them out in the right size and glued them into each of the frames. Some of the white edges of the paper was still visible, so I just used some strong tones around the edge, and it will also make the pictures look even older and more dirty. We also got some sort of kebab in the oven, and I will give it this dry red blood. And then we need some wash. a lot of it. For this part of the building, I will use some Army Painter Strong Tone Wash just to make it a bit more dirty and realistic looking. All the doors are painted and now it's time to install all of them. I do as I did before, using a piece of filament, making sure it's pushed all the way to the bottom and snap off the top. And the final door to be installed is this secret passageway disguised as a bookshelf. Procedure is the same. Put in the filament, snap off the top, and please don't tell my players it's there. They have to find it by themselves. This is finally done, and I'm so happy about how this result turned out. It took me 3 weeks where I painted on this almost every night. After work, I spent a full day working 14 hours just to put down the base colors of this build. I think it is one of the builds that I actually have spent most time on painting. Usually I build my terrain out of foam, and now I got everything served with a 3D printer and I have all the models. I didn't even design this myself. It was just a file I downloaded from Loot Studios where I could get all the parts and 3D print them. But I could not have done this without Bambu Lab. Thank you so much to Bambu Lab for sending me this H2D 3D printer. I could not have done it, or maybe I could actually have done it on the A1. It just would have taken a bit while longer, but maybe if you're going to print something of this size or any huge 3D prints, you will need a bigger and better printer for that project, or multiple A1s. So thank you again to Bambu Lab for sending me this. And talking about Bambu Lab, it is their 4th year anniversary, and they got some pretty good deals on their website. You can go check out some of my affiliate links down below. I will get a small percentage of what you buy, but Bambu Lab actually got some pretty good discounts. So this is it for now. If you already haven't done it, hit that subscribe button. Remember, it is down here, but I'll just show you up here how it's done. And leave a comment down below what you think about printing and painting a build like this. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon.